So we've got some shocking news out of Florida where Judge Cannon has now threatened Jack Smith with sanctions. Glenn, what happened here with Judge Cannon, and why is she now threatening Jack Smith?
So, Brian, Donald Trump in recent days has been posting and making statements that include outright lies, and they're basically violence-inducing lies against the FBI or about the FBI, falsely claiming that when they executed the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, the FBI was authorized to and prepared to shoot Donald Trump and injure his family members. We're going to read one of those lies in a moment. So, of course, with Donald Trump engaging in that kind of extremely dangerous rhetoric, Trump-appointed Judge Aileen Cannon decided to threaten Jack Smith with sanctions. Why? Well, because Jack Smith filed a motion a few days ago with Judge Cannon saying, Judge, we can't have a defendant who's on pretrial release. Remember, Donald Trump is still on pretrial release in 4 felony cases, 2 state and 2 federal. We can't have a defendant on pretrial release posting abject lies that are very likely to incite violence against FBI agents, against FBI field offices. We've already seen some of Donald Trump's supporters inspired to violence against, for example, I think it was the Cincinnati FBI field office. So Jack Smith filed a motion asking the judge to please modify the conditions of Donald Trump's pretrial release so that he can't make these obviously false and, very dangerous assertions, putting the lives of FBI agents at risk. So Judge Cannon took a look at the motion and she said, you know what? I don't think you conferred sufficiently with Donald Trump and his lawyers before you filed this motion, so I am threatening you, Jack Smith, with sanctions. So here's the thing. She didn't care one whit about the violence-inducing lies Donald Trump was telling. And let's talk about this obligation of the parties to confer with one another before they file a motion. It is a thing. I did it hundreds and hundreds of times with defense attorneys. I would say I'm contemplating filing a motion to ask your client to stop lying and inciting others to violence. Will your client agree to stop? No, he won't. So do you oppose this motion? Yes, I do. There, we've conferred. And I put that very information in the motion I filed. We conferred with opposing counsel, and they said they ain't going to stop, and they opposed the motion to modify the conditions. But Brian, we need to just back up a little bit to the motion that Jack Smith filed that got this ball rolling. A couple of days ago, Jack Smith filed a 12-page pleading in the Florida classified documents obstruction of justice espionage case pending against Donald Trump. And he asked the judge to modify Trump's conditions to make him stop lying and endangering the FBI. Here is some of what is contained in that motion. This is what Donald Trump said. Now, mind you, in this motion, and this gets my blood pressure rising, in this motion, Jack Smith said, when we executed the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, we did a couple of things. First of all, we conferred with Donald Trump's lawyers in advance of the search warrant being executed. Now, listen, I don't like to jump on prosecutors, but when I see them do something that I consider inappropriate, I'm going to jump on them. That is borderline law enforcement malpractice. We never give the target of a search warrant a heads up that we're about to execute a search warrant. Why? Because then they destroy evidence, or they tamper with witnesses, or maybe they move classified documents, that are all boxed up from one place to another, so that now that they know the FBI is coming to search Mar-a-Lago, they, can avoid having all of the boxes recovered. So it was mind-boggling when I saw in this motion that the FBI coordinated with Trump's lawyers in advance. But here's the more important part. They made sure that the date they set for the execution of the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, August 8th, 2022, they made sure that Donald Trump and his family members would not even be in the state of Florida, never mind not be at Mar-a-Lago. Knowing that, Brian, here is some of what Donald Trump posted that inspired Jack Smith to file this motion. He said, "The FBI was authorized to shoot me and just itching to do the unthinkable, and was locked and loaded and ready to take me out and put my family in danger." You see the lies he told there when the FBI coordinated before the execution of the search warrant to make sure Trump and his family would not even be in the state of Florida. This is the kind of call to violence that we've seen from Donald Trump over and over and over again. And so Jack Smith appropriately conferred with the defense, told the defense, we're going to be filing this motion. Will you confer with us? Do you oppose it? Here's what they said, Brian. We oppose it. And by the way, this is a holiday weekend, so we're not interested in conferring with you fully right now. How about a week from Monday? Jack Smith said, you know what? We've conferred. And he put that information in the motion. And after that brief conferral, as they call it, just hours later, Donald Trump again posted calls to violence, false information, by saying, just a few hours later, Donald Trump made a statement claiming the FBI was authorized to use lethal force on Trump or anybody at Mar-a-Lago, while the FBI and the DOJ plants evidence to frame Trump. So even after the admittedly brief conferral that the defense wanted to put off for more than a week, Donald Trump continued to post lies that were obviously calls to violence, or potentially calls to violence. So what does Judge Cannon do when she gets her hands on Jack Smith's motion? She threatens to impose sanctions on Jack Smith because she doesn't think Jack Smith's prosecutors gave the defense attorneys adequate time to confer, even though I just laid out the sequence of events that makes it clear they weren't interested in conferring. They wanted to delay the conferral. And during that delay, Donald Trump continued to post lies. This is Judge Cannon acting, and the word that came to mind when I read what's called the minute order, a very short order that was published by Judge Cannon setting out her threat to sanction Jack Smith. This is asinine. This is not conduct befitting of a federal judge, somebody who not just ignores, but I would argue encourages continued violence-inducing lies by a defendant on pretrial release, and instead of addressing it, she yells at the prosecutor. This is the criminal justice system turned on its head.
Glenn, for posterity here, just very quickly, can you talk about the fact that this is standard language, the fact that they're able to use force to execute a search warrant, and that doesn't change even with regard to the search warrant that was executed for President Biden?
Yeah, so Donald Trump started screaming about how the FBI was authorized to kill me. And then Steve Bannon, you'll remember him, he is about to report to federal prison any day now to begin serving his 4-month sentence. He took it one step further, and he said this execution of the search warrant at Mar-a-Lago was, quote, an assassination attempt. Now, first of all, I would say if that were true, which it's not, it would have to be the most incompetent assassination attempt in the history of law enforcement.
Even in the state.
Because
in the state.
They told Donald Trump's lawyers, we want to coordinate so that we do this at a time when neither Donald Trump nor his family is in the state of Florida when we try to assassinate him at Mar-a-Lago. Give me a flippin' break, Steve. Right? But Steve Bannon took it one step further. So, and here, the point that you're getting to is an excellent one, which is every single ops plan, an operation plan, and I was involved in many, what happens is before a significant law enforcement operation kicks off, like the execution of a search warrant, agents, sometimes in conjunction with prosecutors, will sit down, will come up with an operations plan to make sure they have all contingencies covered. There is a standard rule and procedure when the FBI is involved in any law enforcement operation, including the execution of a search warrant. And that says that FBI agents may only use deadly force to repel a lethal attack. In other words, that is standard language in every single law enforcement operation. If police are met with deadly force, and they need to repel it by using deadly force to protect the lives of the agents or the lives of members of the community, only then are they approved, are they able to use deadly force. This standard procedure, and it's not only the FBI, it's every law enforcement agency in the country operates under this same standard procedure. This somehow morphed into Donald Trump and Steve Bannon saying that, the FBI was authorized to kill me and they were itching to do so and to hurt my family. Again, this is the worst kind of lies and propaganda and BS that Donald throws into the public square to try to, 1, undermine law enforcement, and 2, incite and inspire his supporters to violence.
Glenn, I know I sound like a broken record here, but to what extent do you think that all of this Jack Smith being hit with the threat of a sanction, was entirely predictable given his own refusal to seek Judge Cannon's removal? Like, are we supposed to be surprised that the judge is now acting in an entirely hostile manner to Jack Smith when we've all known all along that she's in the tank for the defendant, and yet prosecutors perplexingly refuse to actually take any action against her?
Yeah, I can't say the word. Perplexingly is exactly the right word. I mean, there's nothing but downside for Jack Smith. Judge Cannon couldn't be more antagonistic toward Jack Smith, and she couldn't be acting to the benefit of Donald Trump any more than she already is. Right. I don't understand why Jack Smith hasn't filed a motion seeking her recusal. Let her deny the motion and then appeal it to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and let's litigate the issue in the full light of day and get it resolved by an appellate court panel of fair, impartial, independent judges. And let's never forget that Judge Cannon was reversed previously by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals for abusing her judicial discretion by telling the FBI and the Department of Justice to stop investigating the crimes of Donald Trump that were exposed when classified documents were recovered during the execution of this very search warrant we are now discussing. So she already exposed herself as abusing her judicial discretion and doing something that the law does not allow to the benefit of Donald Trump. Why Jack Smith has not seen fit to file a motion to recuse, continues to perplex me. The other thing I will say, though, is if she ultimately denies this motion, and here is the wiggle room Judge Cannon has given herself by threatening to sanction Jack Smith. She said, at this point, because I don't think you've conferred enough with the defense, again, which is asinine, I'm going to deny your motion without prejudice to refile after you talk to Donald Trump and confer, more substantively. Then I'll see if I want to grant your motion to modify Donald Trump's conditions to tell him he can't lie like this and endanger the lives of FBI agents. So if she ultimately denies it on the merits, which she is very likely to do, that's something that Jack Smith can appeal. And that may end up being a vehicle to then include other things that the appellate court might need to take up, like whether Judge Cannon's impartiality might reasonably be questioned, which is the federal law standard for when a judge must be removed from the case.
Although, I would say he's already got plenty of predicate to actually do that. With the 11th Circuit decision rebuking Judge Cannon, with her bogus interpretation of the Presidential Records Act, which she threatened to give to the jurors, which would, of course, allow them to immediately, dismiss this case against him, with delaying the trial indefinitely, even though it was Donald Trump's defense team itself that offered up an August trial date. You yourself say the recusal bucket runneth over. I think we've got plenty of predicate here. So if he hasn't taken advantage of the opportunity to seek her removal now, she's going to continue to give him more options to do exactly that. And it doesn't look like he's going to take any of them. If he didn't do it the first time or the second time or the third time, does he need a fourth opportunity to take advantage before he actually moves forward? Or are we just going to get the message at this point that he's not going to seek her removal at any instance because he's just not interested in doing that, no matter how hostile she's acting toward the prosecutors?
Yeah, Brian, I don't know. Maybe the 8th time is a charm. I'm not quite sure what benchmark Jack Smith is looking to hit, but I love that you brought up all of those other instances that expose Judge Cannon's lack of impartiality. And I think one of the big ticket ones was when the defense said they could be prepared to go to trial on August 12th, she said, no, I'm not setting any trial date. If that is not a sure sign that she lacks impartiality and has every intent on pushing this trial well beyond the 2024 presidential election, I don't know what was. And one other fact that I don't think we've discussed previously, it's come up in recent days. Judge Cannon actually made a statement during the most recent court hearing in this case that, you know what, this case may be too nuanced for a jury to even decide. What the hell does that mean? I've never heard a judge say that these charges, which have been properly indicted by prosecutors, might just be too nuanced for a jury to decide. I don't know if that means she's going to grant a motion to dismiss based on excessive nuance. There is no such thing, but let me tell you, she has distinguished herself as unfit to serve on this case over and over and over and over again. But like I say, maybe the 8th time is the charm.
It is Wednesday, the 29th of May of 2024, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Wow, man. We got the Christian nationalists. Really, they're working hard. They are. But we'll see. We'll see if the fruits of their labor come to fruition, because they may have a few obstacles. Yep. On their way to heaven, too. Uh-huh. Anyway, is that really what they want? They seem very, very much like materialists, rather than the contemplative spiritual kind. Indeed. Well, what is Eileen Cannon going to do next? Jeez. She seems to have a certain antipathy to the law. And it's no wonder when you consider who she's married to and who appointed her after he lost the election, by the way. After the wheels were put in place for January 6th and the whole deal. Put your ducks in a row. Because, and you got to understand, Trump didn't come up with that. His handlers did. And who are his handlers? Maybe those who have had some practice in destroying emerging democracies in the former Soviet bloc. That's how it works. Corrupt the judiciary. Make even the rule of law questionable, which is not hard to do in governments, especially when you're a heavy-handed authoritarian. That's quite easy. Okay. And saying "we told you so" doesn't really mitigate the fact that this could be a very effed up situation if we allow it to continue. One would think in a functioning democracy that a mobbed up judge, oh, I know, it's only her spouse, you can't blame her, can you? I would think that anybody who has been stacked on these courts by Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society, flying the pine sol flag, yeah, I got to tell you, my mom used to be very obsessed with cleaning. And when she was in a rage, she would rage clean. And usually she was in a rage starting about 4:30 on a Saturday morning. And you could tell she was in a rage because you smelled the pine sol at 4:30 in the morning on a Saturday. And you knew, we won't be watching cartoons today. So the pine sol flag already has a, shall we say, quite a muscle memory of, well, maybe a small amount of derision. Small. Anyway, I understand why my mom is rage cleaning, okay? We were kids and we were assigning just the smell of pine sol. So to this day, the smell of pine sol has a certain effect upon my memory, my demeanor. Anyway, the pine sol flag flying at Leonard Leo's haunts, as well as at the Alito's. Jeez. Okay. I would not be surprised to see what's flying in the chambers of Eileen Cannon's office. I guess that's redundant. And it wouldn't be hard. But we won't be reading about it for another 3 years when Rolling Stone finally cracks the case. Yeah, the Washington Post is so liberal. The New York Times is so liberal you can't read them. Yikes. Well, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should take the crazy lunatic right-wingers at their word, and they're right. Apparently, the Washington Post and the New York Times are not credible enough. And once again, isn't that by plan? Corrupt the judiciary so that even the rule of law is a questionable affirmation or something to ascribe to? We can't follow the rule of law. What are you, some sort of commie? I'm serious. I hear that. These MAGAs are so stupid. How is it that the defense goes first and the prosecution goes last? Because the burden of proof is on the state, you stupid. I used to think when I was growing up, you had to pass a civics test to become president of the United States. Hell, I thought you had to take a civics test to become dog catcher. If you were running for office, I thought you had to pass a civics test. Apparently not. I cannot tell you how many times I've had MAGAs here in sundowntown Southern Oregon. And that's a region, not just my little town. Not just. But in sundown town, Southern Oregon, I have heard so many times from the MAGAs here that before Trump, they were never involved in politics. This is their first foray in politics. They knew nothing about politics, and they don't know anything about politics. And then the next thing I say, well, we if we don't know the rules, we'll make up new ones. And then you try to say, but, you know, what if the wheel's already been invented and you're going about inventing the wheel again, reinventing the wheel? They just can't make that association. Their brains just turn off. They cannot make that link. So, I don't know. What do? Do you argue with them? I don't. I used to when I was younger because, I don't know, maybe I felt like I could still run faster than a bullet. And I figured I could get away with it because I'm white. You can get away with a lot when you're white. And I have. Hope it's been done for good work. But, the Alitos spitting on their neighbors. Jesus, here, if you had some sort of dispute with a MAGA, you might have your house firebombed. I think this young couple had it pretty good in the posh environs of where the Alitos and they all lived. But I'm just saying, the trickle-down theory works this way in behavioral sociology and psychology. What happens at the top trickles down, and then the masses started adopting it in a much more extreme way. Caustic, even. The masses. I guess that's how the trickle-down theory really works. Okay. When you're pissed on after a while, it becomes toxic. Well, we could mitigate all of this by peace, love, and understanding, but we can only achieve peace, love, and understanding when we put the sea wolves at bay. That's mixing metaphors quite a few times over also. And how do we do that? Well, I'm going to just go on my regular rant, and that is to vote in mass numbers. Trump always talks about how he got more votes than any president before. Well, Joe got even more. Almost 10 million more. So shut the F up, loser. Bone spurs. Apparently, Mary Trump says he hates being called Donald. So it gives a lot more nuance to why Ivana purposely called him the Donald. He hated being called Donald from the time he was a little kid. It just triggered him. And I guess it triggered him enough that he was like, his whole life, he was like, when she's dead, I'm putting her at the first tee at Bedminster. And he did. Jeez. Okay. Well, look at the time. I better tell you what we have in store for you here in the Bistro Cafe on this fine Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. It's an egg Benedict dish, okay, with a lovely velvety hollandaise sauce, by the way. If it's not velvety, it ain't a Benedict. So, what do we have in store on the rest of the menu? Klickitat County, or is it Klickitat? Klickitat County, Oregon, has narrowed its options for a new jail, and none include the out-of-control constitutional sheriff lording over everything. I told you, we got sundown town Oregon all over the place here. A former California water official pled guilty to conspiring to steal water for the last 2 decades from the California aqueduct, and then he would sell it to farmers. Where is he keeping it? And the Texas GOP has taken the party's hostility to democracy to a new level. They keep outdoing themselves on that matter. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Europe's cybersecurity chief says disruptive digital attacks by Russia. Digital attacks are usually disruptive by nature, but it has a nice little ring to it. Disruptive digital attacks by Russia have doubled recently in the run-up to the EU elections. Well, that's expected. and a Polish nature photographer who was arrested in Congo and sentenced to life on espionage charges, has been released and returned to Europe. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Right into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, and it is by Troy Brunelson out of the Oregon Public Broadcasting website. Klickitat County may soon shut down its local jail over safety concerns, but the decision continues to raise tensions among the county's leadership. Whether the jail closes entirely remains a question. However, it appears likely that Sheriff Bob Songer, who has vocal detractors and supporters locally, will lose his authority over the facility. A new report shows that the Board of County Commissioners will soon be discussing several options for the jail's future, and none include Songer retaining control. The three-term sheriff slammed the report in an interview yesterday, Tuesday. "We have two county commissioners that are playing political games, and they want to get it out of the hands of the sheriff," he said, in an accent made up totally in the moment right now. "They can black eye the sheriff, beat him up, saying he's incompetent. It's nonsense," the sheriff said, and the third person, because they do that when you're an authoritarian autocrat, with a really weird accent made up on the spot. The report stems from the board's March 29th decision in which the officials voted to begin closing the jail down. The county has considered moving its people in custody to the Northern Oregon Regional Corrections Facility, otherwise known as NORCOR, based in the Dalles, Oregon. County officials now have in hand 4 scenarios to consider the jail's future, according to the report. 2 scenarios involve contracting with NORCOR, which would either close the jail entirely or keep it open solely as a place to book and temporarily hold people in custody. These are the 2 cheapest options. The other 2, which are more expensive scenarios, would see Klickitat County build an entirely new jail or create a new department that supervises the jail and reports directly to the Board of Commissioners. Multiple counties in Washington run their jails independent of the sheriff. Clark County took over its jail in 2023. Songer called his absence in the scenarios a political power play. He called the county commissioners woke while fashioning himself as a constitutional sheriff, which we all know is the far-right ideology that suggests local sheriffs can decide which laws are constitutional because only they know, thus they are the constitutional sheriffs. Now, Songer finds himself in this position largely due to a pair of headline-grabbing safety issues at the jail in the past year alone. Last year, a man killed himself in custody, and his family has signaled they intend to sue for negligence. Then, last fall, a female inmate had deteriorated to the point that she needed to go to the hospital. A police officer at the scene noted the inmate smelled of rotting flesh and was nearly septic. The 44-page budget report, however, focuses on the sheriff's finances because money trumps people every time, you know. Associated Press staff bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A former California water official has pleaded guilty to conspiring to steal water in a deal with federal prosecutors in the state's crop-rich Central Valley. The Los Angeles Times reports that 78-year-old Dennis Valachi, who used to be head of the Panoche Water District, entered the plea in federal court in Fresno. He also pleaded guilty to filing a false tax return. Valachi was accused in a case that alleged that more than $25 million in water was stolen over 2 decades when it was siphoned from a federal irrigation canal through a secret pipe and sold to farmers in other water districts. The Panoche Water District supplies irrigation for farmland in Fresno and Merced counties, much of it from the federal Delta Mendota Canal. Authorities said in court documents that Valachi wasn't the only one taking water, but did not specify who else was involved. Oh, the investigation continues. They estimated that Valachi stole less than $3.5 million in water, a small portion of what they initially alleged had been stolen. The case comes as California has embarked on a years-long effort to conserve water use by passing a groundbreaking law to regulate groundwater pumping, encouraging urban users to replace thirsty lawns with more drought-friendly landscaping, and ramping up storage efforts to help the state navigate expected dry years ahead. Of the Washington Post brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. One of the more remarkable responses to Trump's loss in the 2020 presidential election has been the vilification not of voter fraud, but instead of voting. Because Trump claimed that the election had been tainted by rampant fraud, and because no evidence of fraud emerged, many of his allies scrambled to find a middle ground in which they could claim that the election was somehow suspect without having to amplify those claims. Oh, the work of the autocrat. Many settled on the idea that the election was unfair because states had expanded voting mechanisms because of the pandemic. Oh, horrors! These arguments often centered on exaggerated or untrue claims that these expansions violated state constitutions, but they also shared another quality. They were complaints that there were too many people who voted. Sometimes these criticisms were at least layered with hand-wringing that say ballot drop boxes allowed for more fraudulent votes to be cast, which is not true. Often, though, they were just complaints that it was too easy to cast a ballot, and by extension, that too many legitimate voters or illegitimate voters were able to cast votes for Joe Biden. See? This line of rhetoric, which is omnipresent once you start noticing it, is a reflection of the Republican Party's long-standing apathy about the process of submitting issues to voters and tallying their responses. The Electoral College has been hailed by the right as not only necessary but wise, even though it can award the presidency to the less popular candidate, as it did for the Republican nominees in 2000 and 2016. Republicans have trotted out the hoary, overstated dichotomy between democracy and republicanism, like Senator Mike Lee of Utah went on to try to help Trump retain power despite losing the 2020 election. And over the weekend, in Texas, the state Republican Party offered up perhaps the most explicit example of separating election results from actual voting. At its convention, the party proposed, and its delegates approved, a platform demanding that winning statewide office necessitate also winning at least half of Texas counties. The endorsement of a constitutional amendment mandating that criterion will almost certainly not result in it being implemented, and even if it was, it would probably face significant legal challenges. But this is considered a viable approach to distributing power among the leaders of the state's largest political party is remarkable. It's worth fleshing out how ridiculous the idea is. For one thing, there are a lot of very big and very empty counties in Texas, which has 254 such subdivisions. The 127 least populous counties are home to about 916,000 people, a total that is only 3% of the statewide population. There are 7 counties that by themselves have more residents than those 127 counties. But even if a candidate won all 7 of those counties and the 14.8 million people who live in them, she could be defeated if her opponent won just 127 smallest counties and one more. And that means a Republican. Those smallest counties backed Trump by an average of 59 percentage points in 2020. And they just hate democracy. All right. Let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, the script supervisor was imaginary. As one of the few who have successfully transitioned from sitcom star to hit director, John Krasinski is better off sticking with horror. His latest offering, If, is written and directed by him and is well-intentioned but can't compensate for a weak script. If, which stands for Imaginary Friend, tells the story of Bee, a young girl who is staying with her grandmother for the summer in New York City. Bee has already lost her mother to unknown circumstances, and her father, played by Krasinski, is in the hospital awaiting an operation for an undisclosed condition that we get the impression is more serious than he's letting on. Needless to say, the idea of potentially losing her only surviving parent is stressful for Bee. It's all she can think of until she meets the mysterious Calvin, Ryan Reynolds, who lives in her grandmother's apartment building. Calvin's unlikely job is trying to pair imaginary friends with new kids after their original companions have outgrown them. When asked to be his helper, Bee agrees, and hijinks and important life lessons ensue. While cleverly presented, it becomes predictable and a tad cloying. Adult viewers looking for any subtlety won't find it. But for young kids, the coin may read as cute. Even the so-called plot twist is something that can be seen a mile away and mostly exacerbates the just-mentioned issues. Despite all that, there is some amazing talent on display, including Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who supplies the voice of the long-retired imaginary friend Blossom, and child actor Kaylee Fleming as the lead Bee. While Krasinski has finally succeeded making a movie his kids can watch, it's unlikely that you or any kid over 10 will appreciate If. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
You're listening to the American Democracy Minute, keeping your government by and for the people. Back in October 2023, U.S. Supreme Court justices heard arguments to determine whether redistricting by the South Carolina legislature was prohibited racial gerrymandering or political gerrymandering, allowed by the 2019 Rucho decision. The new opinion could have a dramatic effect on the 2030 redistricting cycle. Last October, justices heard arguments on whether a circuit court erred when rejecting South Carolina's congressional district maps. The legislature split Charleston by moving 30,000 residents from 11 of 12 of the highest concentrations of black voters into another district. In the words of the lower court, bleaching Congressional District 1. The legislature freely admits that it gerrymandered for partisan advantage, but disputes that it did so for racial discrimination reasons. During oral arguments and in his opinion, Justice Alito questioned why the South Carolina NAACP provided no alternate maps showing how adjustments could have been made without moving those communities. In the May 23rd 6-3 opinion, conservative justices concurred with Alito's opinion that the NAACP did not prove that the shifts were done to dilute black voting power. In her dissent, Justice Kagan writes, "What a message to send to state legislators and mapmakers about racial gerrymandering. Those actors will often have an incentive to use race as a proxy to achieve partisan ends." We've linked to the decision at AmericanDemocracyMinute.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day 5 governmental agencies began independent investigations into the Little Steel Strike, then in its 3rd day. The Labor and Justice Departments, as well as the National Labor Relations Board and Senator Robert LaFollette's Civil Liberties Committee, all inquired about Wagner Act violations. Production at Republic, Inland, and Youngstown steel and tube steel mills was grinding to a halt. Across 5 states, strike forces proved stronger than steel bosses had anticipated. Subsidiaries across the Great Lakes region continued to shut down. Weekend wrap-up reports of violent clashes on picket lines appeared in newspapers across the country. Strikers had adopted a quit work or starve policy against those who remained behind the gates. They successfully turned away mail trucks and tore up railroad tracks in yards in Warren and Youngstown, Ohio facilities to stop food deliveries. The strike was referred to as a grim siege, as Republic was forced to drop food by airplanes to hemmed-in scabs behind the lines. At Inland Steel in East Chicago, Indiana, company police clubbed picketers as they stopped railroad cars headed into the plant. In Buffalo, strikers stoned scab cars as they passed through the gate. In Monroe, Michigan, strikers successfully prevented the night shift from crossing. In South Chicago, 3 strikers were being held on conspiracy charges following a pitched battle with police the day before that injured more than 20. 1,000 strikers had attempted to establish a picket line at at Republic Steel's gates. SWAT President Philip Murray demanded additional investigations against Republic, charging the company had been stockpiling ammunition and hired private gunmen. His worries would be confirmed in decisive battles that lay ahead.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 65 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the mid to upper 70s, so about the same as yesterday. And we'll have sunshine with clouds mixed throughout the day. Winds will be out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Mostly clear tonight with lows in the upper 40s, probably more like the low to mid 50s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then partly cloudy tomorrow with highs in the low to mid 80s, warming up. Winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated very high outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index is in the good range at 31 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is very high, pegged at level 9, so do take care. Barometric pressure is rising for a little bit more, and it's currently at 30.36 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 76%, and that'll dry out a bit more during the day as well. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that is the Weather Underground. London is 68 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 62 with rain and a thunderstorm advisory. Rome is 76 and fair with also a thunderstorm advisory. Kabul is 65 and clear. Hong Kong is 68 and cloudy. Tokyo is 68 and mostly cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 62 and clear. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees and sunny. Chicago, Illinois is 60 degrees and partly cloudy with a small craft advisory. And New York is 72 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Topoulos at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Disruptive digital attacks, many linked to Russian-backed groups, have doubled in the European Union in recent months and are also targeting election-related services, according to the EU's top cybersecurity official. Johan Lapissar, head of the EU Agency for Cybersecurity, or ANISA, told the AP in an interview that attacks with geopolitical motives have steadily risen since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022. The number of hacktivist attacks against European infrastructure, threat actors whose main aim is to cause disruption, has doubled from the fourth quarter of 2023 to the first quarter of 2024, Lepasar said late last night at the agency's headquarters in Athens. It is quite a significant increase, he said. Citizens from the EU's 27 member states will vote on June 6th through 9th for lawmakers in the European Parliament in an election that will also shape the EU's executive branch, the European Commission. Earlier today, Belgian officials said police carried out searches at the residence of an employee of the European Parliament and at his office in the Parliament's building in Brussels over suspected Russian interference. Elections also due in the U.S., Britain, and multiple other countries have alerted security agencies to the threat of disruption campaigns funded by adversaries. Staff at the World Desk of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Congolese authorities have released a Polish man who was sentenced there to life in prison on espionage charges. Poland's top diplomat said yesterday, Tuesday, Maurice Majewski is back in Europe. Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski said. Sikorski posted a brief video of himself talking to Majewski over the phone to welcome him back. He did not say where exactly Majewski was. The 52-year-old Majewski was detained in Congo on February and later faced a military court in the Central African nation, accused of spying. Last week, he received a life sentence. No details were released as to where he was held. The allegations against him said that he had approached the front line with Mabondo militiamen, moved along the front line without authorization, and took photos of sensitive and strategic places and secretly observed military activities. The Mabondo is a militia group that has been involved in intercommunal violence in southwestern Congo since 2022. Poland's foreign ministry says that Majewski was innocent. President Andrzej Duda spoke on the phone last week with the Congolese president seeking to obtain Majewski's release. Poland does not have a diplomatic mission in Congo. Last week, Polish Foreign Ministry spokesman Paweł Wąski said without elaborating that Majewski is not a spy. He is a member of a travelers club and was just following his passion in life, Wronski said. His behavior was the result of a lack of knowledge of local customs. Earlier this month, the Congolese army said it had foiled a coup attempt and arrested the perpetrators, including some foreigners. Several U.S. citizens are among those arrested. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.